Hey everyone, I'm here with the man, the myth, the legend. I consider him a friend. He is he founded the most famous health website, Mercola.com.
Well, famous
And
is subjective. This is most visited natural health site in the last
I
few
would
decades.
say I would say it's the most visited natural health site and also the most famous. Everybody knows about it.
Okay.
And for natural health.
Yes.
He's what I like about Mercola is that he's very open-minded. If you give him evidence, he'll change his opinion. He's also a good guy. You know, there's some health people who are not the best people, but he's actually a good guy. And he doesn't really need any big introduction. He has a book out. He's the author of The Truth About COVID. And I'm here to pick his brain about a bunch of different topics. But we can start with what got you into healthcare? One thing you're such a big figure in healthcare. What got you into it?
Well, I've been passionate about health since I was a very small child. I started exercising in 1968 and was going to be an astronaut initially. Then I changed that to medicine when I realized I wanted to take it the next step and learn as much as I can about health. And I was the oddball out in med school. Everyone there was really focusing to treat disease, and my whole passion was like how to get people healthy. So I was a rebel back then.
Did you? A lot of people got into healthcare because they had to overcome some kind of health
Nope.
problem. Is that
No health problem.
you didn't have
Zero.
that story? Okay,
Nope.
that's interesting. And so in your life, what are you trying to optimize and improve? Are you trying to live longer? Like, what's your key focuses?
Yeah, the highest quality function that my body's capable of, optimizing that to the highest degree. Kind of like an athlete in many ways. And I view
Okay.
exercise in my personal life one of the most important strategies to stay healthy. Of course, there's so many other things we can go into. And one of the most important ones, it wasn't on your list that you mentioned, but it reminded me that the last time we met was before the pandemic. It was in Arizona at a Mindshare event. And I remember very clearly I, Ben Greenfield, and a few other people decided at one of the lunches to sit down and take our shirts off because we needed to get sun. And maybe we could start there because, since we've last met, I've learned a lot more about exposure to the sun. And even back then, 3 years ago, when we all took our shirts off, that was the best thing you can do. Because in my mind, exposing your skin to significant sunshine as close to solar noon for maybe a half hour to an hour a day is one of the most important health strategies you can do. And guess what? It costs nothing. And hardly anyone does it. My guess is it's less than 1% of the people. I doubt if even 5% of the people get outside. So they do all these advanced biohacks and they just fail to ignore the most fundamental basics. And why is that so important? Obviously for vitamin D. When I wrote a big paper, and actually the first paper I wrote this century, I wrote a lot last century, but this one, I got busy with the website and really wasn't very enamored with the process of getting papers accepted for publication. But I wrote one on vitamin D. And that was fortunate because the media tried to discredit me for promoting vitamin D. Imagine that, because it was counter to the narrative of taking the jab and social mandate or social distancing and wearing the mask. So anyway, the important thing about vitamin D is that you shouldn't swallow it. You should not swallow it. Ideally, you should get it from the sun. But that's not the only thing you get from sun exposure. And I don't know if you're aware of this. You're a pretty smart guy, but very, very few physicians understand this because this was only figured out a few years ago. That where does 95% of the melatonin in your body, where is it produced?
The pineal gland?
You didn't know it. That's what most people say. No, that's wrong. Only 5% is produced in the pineal.
Interesting. Okay.
95% is subcellular melatonin in your mitochondria when it is exposed to near infrared light. This may be every bit as important as getting sun exposure as getting vitamin D, is the melatonin. Why? Because it's a profoundly effective antioxidant. It's produced in the mitochondria, precisely where the electron transport rate is. And why is that important? Because that's 90% of your energy is produced there. And in the process of producing energy, the exhaust is reactive oxygen species. So you need something to neutralize that. And what better design could have ever been created than produce the antidote for the excessive oxidative stress right where it's needed? But only if you're getting exposed to the sun. Isn't that crazy?
Wow.
That is just
That's
beyond,
nuts.
that is just beyond crazy. So we were ahead of the curve back there at Mindshare in Arizona. We were way ahead of the curve. But it doesn't stop there. Wait, there's more. All right. So you've got nitric oxide. You've got a lot of people drink structured water, as you know, but the structured water, it doesn't matter if you drink it. It matters as your body makes it and makes it. And guess how your body makes structured water? It's when near infrared radiation gets exposed to your skin. That structures the water, and that's important to actually move your red blood cells through the capillaries. It actually charges up the batteries, so to speak, in your body.
I'm a huge fan of sun. We're both big fans of sun. I only live in sunny places, and people are like, wow, how did you get so tanned? I just went outside, and I don't wear sunscreen. It's quite simple. You go outside, you don't wear sunscreen, you're going to get tan, and you do it in a way that you don't get burnt, right? Because if you
we'll
got
talk
burnt,
about
then
why you get burnt. Most people don't know why they get burnt.
Let me hear. Why do you get burnt?
We'll talk about it next.
Okay.
Next on your list. It's next on your list.
All right. So in any case, we're both
suspense for people. Some suspense.
All right.
I keep it because I don't want them dropping off and like leaving.
I like how you think. So sun is massively important, and I didn't know that bit about the melatonin. That it's actually not 95% is not from the pineal gland. So that's really cool bit of information.
It's called subcellular. Below the cell level, yeah.
Incredible. So the thing is, though, when we look at these vitamin D studies, right, and we see a vitamin D study that could cure everything, right? It's like you got cancer, vitamin D, right? Now, there's something called these Mendelian randomization studies that show when you have a higher level naturally, based on your genetics, of vitamin D, not studies that South Dakota is conducting. This is it's like a huge field. You just type in Mendelian randomization in any substance and you'll find studies on it, right? And they are doing this to tease out cause. When they do clinical trials and these Mendelian randomization to see if you have a predisposition, they don't find that vitamin D is actually very effective for quite a lot of things, right? Now, again, I'm a huge fan of sun. And one of the things that it is effective for actually causally is respiratory infections and things like that. But we see
and even COVID, since I published that paper in 2020, there's been a number of randomized controlled trials which prove causality of vitamin D to COVID.
So I want to talk to you about that because when I look up the research, I see some of the studies saying that there is an effect and some of the studies saying that there is an effect. And what do you make of the studies that show that it's not effective?
The main key to interpreting most of those studies, because they're seriously flawed, I would say over 99% of them are fundamentally flawed. Why? Because they're giving a specific dose of vitamin D. They may give 1,000, 2,000, 4,000, 5,000, 10,000, 50,000 once a week. Who knows? But the failure is that they don't check the pre and post serum levels of vitamin D because it's about the serum concentration. It's not about the dose. And that's capitulating, surrendering to the fact that I don't believe people should be swallowing vitamin D. I believe there's a completely different result and consequence of optimizing vitamin D levels based on how you achieve that versus natural versus sun exposure versus swallowing a supplement, which I have not swallowed in 15 years. Guess what my most recent vitamin D level was? Haven't taken it in 15 years. No oral vitamin D. Let me know. Take a guess. What? You know them. You're a big lab guy.
50 nanograms per milliliter?
Very close. It was 92.
Wow. That's incredible. About, I guess 50 because I feel like that's around the amount that if you get, a fair bit of sun, it gets to 50 nanograms, but 92 naturally. Holy crap.
Yeah, naturally.
Totally I can tell you don't wear any sunscreen.
No, haven't worn that in a long time. I'm not opposed to it in certain circumstances. I think it's helpful, especially if it's a non-toxic sunscreen.
And if somebody's going to get burnt, right? Well,
yeah, we'll tell you how to prevent burning. It'll almost
I just wear a
eliminate you
cap.
ever getting burned.
I wear a cap and a shirt. That's it.
I don't wear a shirt. That's one of the reasons my levels are higher. But the cap is good because it prevents photo aging on the thin skin you have in your face. So it would be wise to not have excessive sun exposure on your face for sure. If you're concerned about cosmetics, as almost everyone is.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about how does it feel to be the center of a maelstrom. Basically, the New York Times just did a hit piece on you. And
yeah, it was a video documentary, 1 hour. They took literally a year, Joe, and a whole team they spent. Maybe $250,000, $500,000. I have no idea. But they contacted hundreds of my ex-employees. They went back to medical school from 40 years ago. They tried every which way from left to right to dig up some dirt for me, and they couldn't find one thing. They couldn't find one thing. How many other people would stand for that type of scrutiny? But no, they found nothing. And it was pretty amazing piece. It's behind a firewall. It's on Hulu and a channel called FX, I believe, which is a cable channel in the U.S. So it's not widely distributed, sadly, because it really would have helped us out.
Because they couldn't find anything on you.
They couldn't find anything. All they said was almost everything was complimentary, and they spun it. I mean, they had to actually interview themselves. The producers interviewed themselves to say bad things about me.
Lord.
Does
it impact you at all psychologically?
Oh, I'll tell you, I am beyond grateful. I'm ecstatic. It's the biggest gift I've ever been given, an honor, an award, and privilege, that they're able to do this. The book I wrote before COVID, you know what that was?
What was that?
That was a book called EMF'd. It was all about the dangers of EMF. And I have a specific caution and warning in that book about anyone who's wearing AirPods, because they're transmitting Bluetooth radiation right into the skull, and they just don't understand all the excess oxidative stress they're causing in their brain, contributing to an increased risk of Alzheimer's.
Okay. And so all right, let's talk about EMF a little bit. Do you, if
I only wrote a book on it. That is actually the best book out there.
But
it really
you wrote
is.
a book about COVID, and I'm sure, and there's a lot of vaccine information in there.
Oh, yeah.
What would you say, if I gave you the chance, either you had to get vaccinated or you had EMFs for 5 years, what would you pick?
Oh, EMFs for sure. Vaccines is there's no question. I mean, this is going to kill probably hundreds of millions of people.
EMFs for your whole life, vaccine or EMFs for your whole life.
Yeah, I know. I wrote the book. Okay, I know how to mitigate against EMF stress, and it depends on the type of community. EMF is a generic, bland, non-specific. I mean, there's multiple types of EMFs. There's magnetic fields, electric fields, radio frequencies. So I need to know which type and the concentration, the exposure levels. So, I mean, I just optimize health, and that's one of the things I'm not going to expose. I sleep in a Faraday cage.
Wow. But is there like any kind of, like, let's say a lot of cell phone EMFs for your whole life versus a vaccine? I'm trying to get the scale of what you think.
Well, okay. Let me just, if you obviously didn't read my book, but I will reverse the question or rephrase the question for you. It is just substitute EMF to smoking. And that's the same question. So it's very similar to smoking with respect to the fact that you're not going to have significant consequences unless you do it for a long time, typically decades. So you're not going to drop dead from brain cancer after wearing those AirPods, silly AirPods you're using now, for a year or two. But do it for a decade. You're just asking for trouble. There's just no way. It's a biological harm to your body. There's no justification to doing anything healthy to your body. It is not. It's only
how would we see? I have this question for quite a few health topics, and we could kind of parse this into vegetable oils, EMFs, vaccines. How do you track if vaccines are harming you? Generally, like, you could see, okay, your blood pressure goes
probably
up.
The single best variable is one that the CDC and almost all the global regulatory agencies, including the WHO, refuse to monitor, and that's ACV. ICM. I'm sorry. All-cause mortality. All-cause mortality. Okay. Carefully monitored. How many people are dying from it? That's the key.
And what about EMFs? Are there biomarkers for that, or we don't know?
Just generally, inflammatory markers like HSCRP would be important.
Okay. So if your
Because it
HSCRP is
increases
lower,
it. Yeah, then it suggests it, but it causes biological damage. You want to know the mechanism because you haven't studied it, so I can get you up to
well,
speed.
well, I want to know how if I would be able to track it, right? Because
No, well, I don't know that you can. I think the biodamage is sort of obscure and stealth, and it's
okay.
at a really micro level, specifically at the tissue target. So it's chronic and it's pervasive, and it's just like chipping away at your health.
Let's talk a little bit about vegetable oils, right? I know I think they're bad, but reading some of the stuff that you've wrote, you're obviously of the opinion that they're one of the worst things for you, right?
Yeah, it's the single most deadly element of your diet, in my view.
You think vegetable oils or
Exponentially.
smoking is worse?
Well, that's not smoking isn't part of your diet. You're
Right.
comparing apples
Okay,
to
you're
oranges.
just saying part of the diet. Okay.
Yeah, it probably is every bit as bad as smoking, if not worse, though, considering the magnitude of its abuse. So it's a really potent.
What is like so bad about it that obviously it oxidizes. I know a few things, but you're more of an expert on vegetable oils than I am. So give me the case for why it's so bad.
Well, it's much worse than sugar. Most health people think that sugar is evil, and now excess sugar isn't necessarily good. But how long, if you have a lot of sugar, say a big gulp or 3 cans of Coke, how long is that sugar going to last in your body? The effects of the sugar. What's your guess?
The sugar itself, I mean, it gets, especially if you're metabolically healthy, it gets metabolized pretty
Well,
quickly.
obviously, people drinking 3 cans of Coke typically aren't.
I don't know,
healthy.
2 hours, 2 hours.
Yeah, so essentially, you're right. It's on hours. Okay,
Right.
It's a matter of hours. Now, it might be a day or two in some people, but essentially, the metabolic consequences of having that sugar is highly limited. So, what are the consequences of? How long is the impact of having an order of French fries or a few donuts going to last?
Could be. I mean, I know where you're going because it gets embedded into your cellular lipids. So months,
membranes typically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, months is wrong.
Okay.
It's that the half-life is 2 years. The half-life is 2 years. The half-life is 2 years. So 7 years is going to be in your tissues generating metabolic damage. 7 years.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So that is one of the reasons. And then there's a lot of these studies that suggest sugar is harmful, right? Well, it's because they're not teasing out the details. They're looking at processed foods. And if you take the typical processed food, not all of them, of course, some are different, but the typical processed food, you've got sugar in there. But what else do you have in the typical processed food?
It's always vegetable oil.
Seed oils. Usually twice as much as the sugar.
Wow.
So sugar's been vilified. And I'm not saying high fructose corn syrup is good to have and abuse. Not at all. But you have to take it in percentage. It is nowhere near as toxic as seed oils. And if you look at these epidemiological studies, you've got levels of sugar going down, especially in China. They have like a tablespoon of sugar a day. And yet the seed oil concentration is going up, and diabetes and obesity are exploding despite lowering levels of sugar. It's not sugar. It is seed oils. And so if you're a student of history, how many and you lived in the U.S. at one time.
Yeah, my whole life.
Yeah. So how many heart attacks do you think we had in the United States before 1900? Before 1900, which is not that long ago, 120 years, right?
I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not sure. I mean, probably not that many.
That's the correct answer. It's a handful, like less than 10. Less than 10.
Okay.
Today, it's the number one cause of death. So what the hell happened if it wasn't sugar? Cancer, right? There was less than one person in 100 before 1900 that had cancer. About 1 in 200 people had cancer, were dying. It existed. It wasn't non-existent, but it was small. What's the number today? It's not 1 in 200. What is it? It's 1 in 3.
Yeah, 1 in 3
are dead from cancer. So what caused this? What caused you? You know how many people? This is another question. This was published last month in July in the Journal of American College of Cardiology. How many people in the United States are metabolically inflexible? How many? What percentage?
90%.
Close. Actually, 93%. 14 out of 15 people.
That makes sense.
We've got 80% of the people in many states in the U.S. are overweight. 43% are obese, expected to be 50% by the end of the decade.
And you think that's from the vegetable oil?
There's no question. It's unequivocally indisputable in my mind. And if you look at the data, there's very strong. Even when you go dive deep into the molecular biology of it, there's very clear reasons why that should be the case. It's excess linoleic acid. And guess what else linoleic acid causes? Not only does it cause cancer generically, it causes skin cancer and sunburn. When you go out in the sun and you get sunburned, it's because you have too much damn linoleic acid in your skin. That's what's getting burnt, the linoleic acid. It's not the saturated fat that's being burned. No way. Wow. It's linoleic acid. So this is the way that you eliminate sunburn, is by radically lowering your level of linoleic acid. Most people are taking 10 times as much as they're designed to have. 10 times. Some are more. Some are 15, 20 times.
Interesting. I just wrote a few articles. I obviously think vegetable oils are bad. I was questioning exactly how bad they are. But since I wrote those articles, because I actually feel pretty good, and I thought I was consuming a lot of vegetable oils. Then I realized that I actually wasn't, because I went to the restaurant that I buy all my food from, and they said, no, we don't, like all the foods that I typically eat, they say they don't put it in. And then like, let's say the broccoli or whatever, they said they put a very, very small amount. And I don't touch any processed foods whatsoever. And I don't eat nuts and seeds either. So
good.
And I take omega-3s.
There's one way to know though. You can use that app called chronometer.com and enter your food, but you have to trust. I mean, the app fails or falls apart when you eat out of the restaurant, because you don't know what they're using unless you go in the kitchen. Now they could say that too, and they may be lying to you. They may be lying. Who knows? Unless you're back in the kitchen.
There's also a genetic predisposition. Some people naturally have higher linoleic acid in the blood, just genetically, just like everything else. Same with DHA, same with...
in the blood, it doesn't matter. It's in the membrane. So like when you do fatty acids...
If it's higher in the blood, it's going to correlate with what's in the membrane, I think. No?
Yeah. Well, it depends on what you're eating. Are you fasting? I wouldn't do a blood analysis to figure that out. Usually it's from like a red blood cell membrane, or even better would be a tissue analysis.
Mm-hmm.
Like a biopsy.
So what kind of test would somebody do to measure how much linoleic acid is in their membranes?
Well, there are a number of companies who offer that. The one that I use is Nutrival from Genova Diagnostics, which I suspect you're familiar with.
And and what kind of tests do they have? Like the omega-6, omega-3 ratio?
No, they have the whole thing, and they actually give you the quantitative level of linoleic acid. Their reference ranges are off because they don't understand that the linoleic acid level should be under 2%. So I mean, I got like one of the lowest levels they recorded and it was marked as targeted as abnormal because it was too low, but it was wrong. They just had
What's your ratio? What's the ratio of like in your test between linoleic acid and omega-3?
Well, it's omega-6 generically. They use 6 to 3, but 80% of 6 is linoleic acid. So, I don't remember the specific ratio. It depends on which way you turn it around. I just don't recall. I mean, I'm not really. I'm not a big believer in the ratio. Is that useful? You really need the low quantity of linoleic acid in your body. See that there's a desaturase enzyme. I'm sure you're aware of delta 6 desaturase, which desaturates and elongates omega-3 fats that you get from plants or even in animals, because there's animal foods have omega-3 fats in them too, but they're not. I mean, they can be the longer chains like the EPA and the DHA, but usually they're alpha linoleic acid, which is the more predominant form. But if you're not eating a lot of linoleic acid, then this desaturation elongating enzymes are not inhibited, so that you can. The bottom line is you have this alpha linoleic acid that you can convert to EPA and then subsequently to DHA. But if you have a lot of LA, that enzyme is inhibited, so you're not able to make it.
I didn't know that.
You don't have to worry about taking a lot of extra omega-3s if you're not eating LA. Your body will self-correct. So, because that enzyme will start working again.
Did you? I'm assuming you never really, like, for the past 30 years, you weren't eating a lot of packaged foods. So has your diet changed since you found out?
It's changed pretty dramatically. Yeah, I mean, I was just as ignorant as you were not too long ago.
So what changed? Let me hear how your diet changed since then, and what have you noticed any effect personally from it?
Yeah. I think I'm probably one of the best shapes I've ever been in my life for a lot of reasons. I mean, I've really taken biohacking to the next level, and so a lot of advanced details that we have no time to discuss. But from health and strength and vitality and energy, I'm just like in the best shape ever. I mean, I'm deadlifting 400 pounds and leg pressing over 600 pounds.
Wow.
So yeah, and I've got plenty of energy. So I mean, that's the key.
And so tell me what you changed about your diet since you found out how bad these vegetable oils are.
Well, I switched to more carnivore, so I don't have a lot of plants. That's a big thing I've got on my diet. I have some, but not many. I have a carrot salad and cauliflower and Brussels sprouts, but I just have a lot of plants. So,
but the plants, which plants, just the nuts and seeds are going to have omega-6.
Nuts and seeds are high. So that was one thing I didn't understand when I was at your level. Like I liked macadamia nuts because they're high in protein and low in carbs, but I was too focused on carbs, and I didn't understand that they were also low in linoleic acid. But almost every other seed and nut is high in LA. So I don't have any seeds or nuts unless it's I might have an occasional almond or something or walnut, but essentially I don't have any. I just have macadamia nuts, and then it's still only like maybe 15 a day.
What other? But what other? The grains, like regular grains, don't have a lot of omega.
Oh yes, they do. That's not true. They have a lot.
Oh, they do?
In fact, yeah. I mean, I just started some oat bran, which is unusual because I wrote the book, The No Grain Diet, in 2004. Right, that was a New York Times bestseller, my first book. So grains are not good for most people. Now, I've been having some oat bran recently. It's gluten free. But it does have linoleic acid. I only have a half a cup a day, but that's given me 2 grams, which is significant. Actually bumped my total percentage of LA down up to over 2%. I was under like 1.7%. Now I'm like 2.1%. So that's your goal. You want to get your total LA by percent of calories content under 2%. And I probably am under 2% because the chronometer data I'm using is flawed because I have 4 chicken eggs a day. And I raise a chicken, so my chickens have 75% lower linoleic acid than the typical chicken.
Okay.
Because I don't feed them any grains. Almost every chicken is fed, even if it's organic, they're fed organic grains, and the LA is through the roof. That is the number one source of linoleic acid in Americans' diet is chicken. Number one.
Interesting. I mean, and so I basically eat a carnivore type diet. It's just vegetables and meat, chicken, stuff like that. So you're saying that I probably have quite a low level.
Probably. Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah.
But you have to be really careful. I know we talked earlier, you said you were a big fan of olive oil, and I would disagree with that fondness because almost 80% of olive oil is adulterated. It has to do with organized crime and it's a big industry. And even if you found one of the pure ones or you did it yourself, which is really hard. I mean, the average person has no idea how hard it is to make good olive oil. You have to pick the olives like within a day of their ripeness. I mean, so it's a very limited window of picking. And then it gets worse. After you pick them, you have to press the oil within a few hours. So it's a really challenging thing to do the right way. And obviously with coordinating all that and the effort and the labor intensiveness of that, they're going to have to charge you a bunch. So it's like $50 a bottle to get a good olive oil. So and then even if you have the best olive oil and it's not adulterated, it's going to oxidize. And if you eat, it still has linoleic acid in it, maybe 10%. So if you go to 4 or 5 tablespoons, you're going to get a hefty dose of linoleic acid. So yeah, should you never use olive? No, just make sure it's really healthy and use a tablespoon a day, and you're probably golden.
I used to be a big fan of olive oil. I just stopped for the past couple of years. I stopped consuming it mainly because I get enough fats in the meats. Like
right. Yeah. Now just be careful of the meats. No chicken and no pork, but the rest are pretty good. I want to stay away from pork.
I do eat chicken, but I don't really like pork, just the taste of it too much.
Yeah.
But what's the problem with chicken?
The same thing with pork. They're feeding them grains. So the grains are loaded with linoleic acid. So about 20%, chicken fat is about 20% linoleic acid. Your meat is about 2%. It's 10 times higher.
Oh, interesting. And what if it's the difference between grass-fed and not grass-fed meat?
Almost no difference. Now, with respect to linoleic acid, with respect to health, there's definitely some, because the organic grass-fed is likely going to have very reduced, if not almost no, levels of glyphosate and other pesticides and ingredients. So you want to stay away from that for other reasons. But with respect to linoleic acid, it's not a big issue.
And this is like maybe some naivete, but when I look up vegetable oils and, health effects, cardiovascular disease, there have been studies that show, most of the studies are actually looking to see if PUFAs, polyunsaturated fats, are decreasing, omega-6 are decreasing the risk of cardiovascular disease. And the studies that I've found seem to say they don't decrease the risk, they don't really increase the risk. There's just no difference. Why do you think that is, or am I? Because
most of them are. No, they're just they're doing the studies incorrectly, and they're just not analyzing properly. And the controls are using would be like another diet that's really high in PUFA, so they can't find the difference. When you look into details of the diet they're feeding the controls, it's all screwed up. So it's like the same thing they do for vaccines, right? When they do a safety study for a vaccine, what is the placebo? The placebo is another vaccine.
You're saying they're replacing omega-6 with some other crap? Or
no, the control diet they're using, usually they typically, with the randomized control trials, they typically do lab animals. I mean, human studies are much harder to do and very expensive. But the ones that do lab animals, you'll see they're giving them supposedly they're giving them lard. And lard is like 20-30% PUFA. 20-30%. And they're assuming that's the control. So that's the reason. But the fundamental reasons why people are dropping dead from heart disease is because of the linoleic acid. Why? Because it gets into the cell membranes and it causes oxidative stress. It oxidizes the LDL. It's not LDL that causes heart disease. And you know very well that people can have cholesterol levels of 300, 400, 500 and be perfectly healthy, have no elevated coronary artery calcium scores. It's because they don't have oxidized LDL. What causes oxidized LDL? Linoleic acid, not saturated fat. Not saturated.
What level is your LDL at? Is it over?
It's too damn low. I've got a genetic disease called thalassemia, and it actually was able to address the cause, but the artifact of thalassemia is it causes you to have a low cholesterol. I mean, I've had cholesterol levels, total cholesterol under 100 when I was younger, under 100.
Oh,
I'm
Wow.
not claiming that's healthy. I'm not deluded like most of the public or the physicians. I know it's very healthy. It should be about 200. But nevertheless, it's too high. But now, when I was eating strict carnivore and I had a high protein diet, I was actually able to get my levels up for 200 the first time in my life. I was very happy about that. But the problem is my kidneys don't tolerate it because I was abused by the medical system. My dentist, and 30 years ago almost now, took out my mercury fillings because I was eating a bad diet when my mom didn't know any better, and I just had lots of cavities. And he took it out incorrectly, just had lots of mercury release, and my kidney function went to hell. So I have to be really careful with my protein intake. I can't really go above 110 grams of protein a day, or my kidney function
that's a
starts
little.
getting worse. So I'm limited. I know the solution for it is what you're doing. I just can't do it unless I get a kidney.
How do you eat a carnivore diet with 110 grams of protein a day? You just
Well,
eat.
it's not. I eat a lot of fat. I mean, I have like 4 to 6 ounces of ghee a day.
Oh, wow. So the thing is
So I have a lot of
that
fat.
for
I have like
me,
300 grams of fat.
my LDL goes through the roof when I eat a lot of saturated fat. And since I do eat a lot of saturated fat because I'm on
That's
a
not necessarily an
carnivore type
issue
diet.
unless you're eating a lot of PUFA.
Right. No, I know that argument. I guess it's like, yeah, I hear what you're saying. It's just that I don't know. I kind of want to take a risk reduction strategy. I don't know. It's just I feel like it's something that there's so many studies showing that
Forget the studies. You're the only one that counts. If you're really concerned, do what you think is the right thing, and then do the appropriate test to monitor yourself. Because I mean, heart disease is not something that kills you overnight, right? It takes a long time.
Right.
So you can get a coronary artery calcium score. I know it's a CT
I
scan.
did actually. I did, and it was very low.
Okay, well then go with the saturated fat. Raise your LDL through the roof, and then take it again. See what happens. Because it will regress if you were wrong, right? There's not like you don't have a solution. You don't have to go on drugs. You just reverse it, because you can reverse heart disease, atherosclerosis at least. So it's easy to do.
What are the top 5 things that you think people are doing that are really harming them? Vegetable oils are number 1. Whatever.
Not enough sun exposure.
100%. What else?
Yeah.
Give me 3 more.
They are eating too many hours of the day. Time restricted eating is one of the most powerful free interventions you could ever have. So only eat the 6 to 8 hours a day, and at least 3 to 4 or 5 hours before you go to sleep.
Okay. 4?
4. Let me see. Probably.
Would EMFs be in the top 5?
Yeah, I would probably. I'd have to look at my whole list just to balance them out a little bit. I think it depends on. Yeah, probably exercise. Exercise is probably the single most important drug. We know it is the most powerful, without any question at all, intervention you can use to prevent Alzheimer's. And Alzheimer's is a good representative of chronic degenerative disease. So I think you're beyond foolish not to commit to a lifelong program of exercise. Now, the only exception, of course, were those people who don't need it. And there are some people who don't need exercise. Who are those people? The people who work like hell for a living, like farmers or loggers or something, where you have a job, which like our ancestors did, where you're doing real work for a living, and you're moving your body like it was supposed to. Most all of us don't do that. So if you're like me, you and me, you got to commit to an exercise program. You don't have to, but if you want to optimize and maximize your health, there's just no way out of it. So I will be. I've been exercising since 1968. That's a long time. That's 54 years, and I plan on exercising until the day I die. I really do. There's no reason I would ever move that. So EMFs is a toxic exposure. I mean, I guess it's smoking, or EMFs are the cigarettes of the 21st century, right? So, if we had this discussion last century, we'd say can't smoke, right? Well, you got to limit your exposure to EMFs. I mean, I think that's really crucial. With respect to another powerful intervention that I would include up there, really, really powerful. It's advanced, admittedly, and it requires a little knowledge we don't have to discuss today, but I love a near, not far, a near infrared sauna as a really important tool, especially for preventing Alzheimer's and just just optimizing, lowering all-cause mortality quite dramatically, and the Finnish studies are quite profound. So that's another simple tool. I mean, it's definitely one of the top ones, but it's 5 or
I'm a
6.
big, yeah, I'm a big fan of sun, exercise, sauna, and some of the
Yeah.
other things you mentioned. What about dairy? Do you consume dairy, or is that on the no list?
I have a little bit. I just started some organic goat milk,
Okay.
kefir, just an ounce a day. So, but you can consider ghee or butter a dairy. It's just not much. I mean, ghee has, of course, most of the protein removed, so there's not much milk protein, but it's certainly animal fat or dairy fat. So I'm a
And what
big
about
fan.
supplements? Like, what are the top supplements that you get enough vitamin D from the sun, so you don't need that.
I haven't taken
But
vitamin D for 15 years
right.
orally.
Well, so tell me about the
But my
supplements
vitamin D level is only 90, so I was thinking about supplementing.
that 90, just to give the listeners context, is like, the danger level of what the Institute of Medicine says, right? It's 90
Yeah.
nanograms per milliliter. Like they put it as like
90 nanograms per
100
milliliter, right. Yeah, so
as
100 would
toxic,
be,
right? According to the
no,
iOS.
I don't know if they do that. It isn't toxic because your body's producing it. They've got these negative
Yeah,
feedback
no,
loops
it's
that limit
natural.
it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, and if I went out and walked instead of solar noon and did it like an hour or two earlier or later, it would probably only be about 60 or 70.
Do you find that
So
you get a lot of like more wrinkles from the sun, or not really?
I
Do you
haven't
put on
noticed
like
it.
lotion? You put on
No, I don't.
lotion, or
Nope.
oh wow, that's incredible.
I haven't noticed it, but yeah, I'm almost 70 years old, so I don't know if I'm going to
No,
notice
I
it.
think for 70, you have. I mean, you don't look 70, number one, but you don't have wrinkles of a 70-year-old, especially someone who never wore sunscreen. So I'd say,
Yeah.
N equals 1 would say that you don't have to worry that much about wrinkles if you're eating or living a healthy diet and lifestyle.
Yeah, and I take something called astaxanthin, which is also another powerful. I mean, I
What
like it.
dosage?
I take 12 milligrams.
12 milligrams. Okay,
Yeah,
I've been experimenting with 12 milligrams to see
yeah,
like when I get a lot of sun in the day instead of.
yeah. It definitely provides a level of UV protection, no question about it, no question. It's very, very clear. It's a really potent antioxidant. But one of my favorite supplements reminds me because it's an antioxidant is molecular hydrogen. Most people would take it as a tablet. I have it. I consider it, even though it's not a tablet, I'm taking it as a gas. I have a device that makes molecular hydrogen gas. So I consider that a supplement. And I do it for I have a 7% concentration, and I just inhale by nasocalamin, about 30 minutes a day,
Wow.
usually in the morning. So, and why? Because it's a selective antioxidant. And what does that the hell mean? It means that unlike most antioxidants, which are indiscriminate and don't distinguish between healthy and beneficial free radicals and deleterious ones, this one essentially it locks and loads your system to get ready to produce antioxidants if you need them. If there's no excessive oxidative stress, it's not produced. It just hangs around, just wait. It's like loading the chamber, because if you don't have anything if you don't have a bullet in the chamber, I'm sure you've fired weapons, but you've got to load the chamber. If there's no bullet in there, you press the trigger, nothing's going to happen. Well, that's what molecular hydrogen does. It loads the chamber so that if you have a sense, your sensor says, "Oh, I got excess," and then boom, you fire it, and then your body makes dozens, hundreds of different antioxidants: glutathione, reductase, glutathione synthase, and catalase, superoxide, dismutase. So
I used to have a machine as well. I used to drink a lot of, but I stopped using it because
this is a gas. It's not making molecular hydrogen water. Is making gas. It's a big difference. A big difference.
Interesting.
Let's go back to your original question. The 5 things that people have wrong, right? So way above sauna would be too much iron. Too much iron. I totally forgot. I'm not looking at my list. I forget. So yeah. So one of my strategies is you'll love this. Almost everyone watching this needs to donate blood at least 3 to 4 times a year.
What's your ferritin level?
My ferritin level is about 25.
25. Wow, that's pretty low though, no?
Well, I'd like to get it to like 5. if I can. I'm on
You want to
target
get it to 5.
Yeah.
Isn't that going to be iron deficiency? You're not worried?
Nope.
Wow.
The ideal ferritin level should be about 0.
And so you're saying that you are measuring your serum iron, and making sure
TIBC, serum iron, TIBC, serum percent transferrin saturation, the whole ball of wax.
And
Yeah.
all those
are
come
good.
out
And
normal?
hemoglobin.
Okay.
I mean, obviously,
Hemoglobin, right.
if you have a ferritin of 5 and your hemoglobin is like 8, something's wrong. Something's not right.
What's your hemoglobin, let's say?
Well, my hemoglobin is aberrant because of my thalassemia, so it never goes above 12. It's always in the 11s. So, but I just look it up. Thalassemia, you do not have a hemoglobin over 12. It just doesn't work that way.
Okay.
So it kind of annoys me a bit because CBC is a very powerful predictor, as you know from your lab company, and I can't use any of my indices for health predictions because of the genetics. It just doesn't work. Now, if the people were using populations of thalassemics and then taking the data from that, but they're not. They're using normal populations. So
I see.
all right, it was
Awesome.
good catching up, and glad to have the time.
Always great to pick your brain, and I appreciate it. Your wealth of knowledge, and it's fun.
All right, thanks, Joe. Good
All right.
catching up. Bye now.
Thank you. Take care.